Rabbi, how are you?
Fine, how are you?
Always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you.
Me too.
Oh, that's no time, but I saw you this morning.
That's right.
That's right. Me too. You're not like that. It's all. And then on the road for hours.
And that if the Torah chose to use a particular word, the Torah is telling us a message thereby, even though there are other words that could convey the same general meaning. So in this week's Parsha, the word Haker appears in a number of different instances. So the word Haker means to recognize, to see. So why does the Torah use that word when it could have used other words that would signify the same idea? So we have a few instances in the Parsha. The first instance is by Yehuda and Tamar, one of the strange stories in the Torah. That Yehuda mistakes Tamar for being a woman of ill repute, being a harlot, and that he impregnates her. and that the result eventually is the birth of twins, Tzemach and Zorach.
Yeah.
And out of that will come the royal house of Israel and the Messianic era. That's a very strange story. And if we were the ones that were writing the Torah, A, we would not have included it. And B, we would have somehow altered it completely. So there it says that when she presented Yehuda with the evidence that he was the man who impregnated her, so she said the word Haker no, recognize. Who's the owner of these items? So that's one instance where it says Haker, recognize. Second instance that we had in the Torah, in the story of Yosef and his brothers in last week's Parsha. They brought back a bloody shirt. They said to the father, Haker no, Aksonis bin Chaim lo. Is this the shirt of your son? And Yaakov immediately jumped to the conclusion, Torah Yosef. Yosef has been destroyed. Chayaro. It was consumed by a terrible enemy, animal. So there also they use the word Haker, recognize. They didn't have to use the word at all. They should just present the shirt and then say, Aksonet bin Chaim lo. Is it the shirt, the tunic of your son or not? Why do they say Haker? And then there's a third instance in this week's Parsha where the brothers come. Now Yosef is in Egypt, so he has a strange beginning. He's falsely accused by the wife of Potiphar. He's placed in the prison through the miracle of the dreams. The Saramashkim relates to Paro that there's someone that could help him. Yosef comes and interprets the dream. Paro is satisfied with the interpretation. And then Paro does something very strange. He says, oh, nobody is smarter than you are. No one more talented than you are. You're just the man that I need to be prime minister. And he makes him the viceroy over Egypt. He changed his name to Tzofnas Paneach. And Yosef comes to exalted royalty and greatness. And Yosef has two sons. So when the oldest son is born, Yosef is still on a high from the fact that he has been promoted to this office. and that the entire empire of Egypt bows down to him. So he calls him Menashe. Kinashani Elokim Esoni Veskol Beisovi. The past is erased. You have made me forget everything. I forget my father, I forget the brothers, I forget what they did to me. I forget all of the problems because now I've risen above them all. I'm wealthy and powerful, respected. My dream has been realized. He's troubled by that because the memory of his father still haunts him. He thought he got rid of it. And that's why he called his second son Ephraim. Rani Elokim be'eretz Onyi. In the land of my affliction, the Lord has made me fruitful. So now it's no longer the glorious Egyptian empire that he rules over. But it is rather Eretz Onyi, the land of my affliction. Because he cannot rid himself of the image of his father. That's what Chazal meant, that when he came to the wife of Potiphar, he saw Yaakov Avinu. His father haunts him all of his life. When he reveals himself to the brothers, his first question is, Haod Avichoi? My father, what's with my father? So there also, it says that when the brothers came down to purchase grain for their family, so there he appeared before him. He's got these 10 guys in black hats standing before him. Vayaker Yosef Hasecha. Again, the word Haker, Vayaker. He recognized his brothers. Vaheim lo ikiruhu. But they did not recognize him. So Rashi says the simple explanation, we're talking about physical recognition. And Yosef went away when he was only 17. Now he's a full mature person at 30. He has a beard. He's dressed in the royal garb of the Egyptian Empire. So they didn't recognize him. He had a disguise on. But he recognized them. So again, the Torah uses the word Haker Vayakiru. We recognize them. So what lies behind all of this? What does the Torah mean when it tells us Haker? So obviously it does not mean in its simplest form to recognize something. Recognize that this is your son's shirt. Their purpose was that Yaakov should identify it, which he did. They never said anything. Yaakov is the one that came to the conclusion, Ki Torah Yosef. So the word Haker, recognize, is not limited to a physical recognition of a person or an item. It means see it in the perspective of all of history. See it in the perspective of what has gone before and what we hope will come later. To be able to recognize something. We have that same idea more subtly in the English language when you say that I recognize this government. It means that I see that this government has status, that it's legitimate. It's not just I know who the leaders of the government are. So, Yehuda Vayered Yehuda metoch echot. Yehuda's on a downer. He regret. He was the one that said that they should sell him to the caravan of merchants. He apparently is the strongest of the brothers, even though he's the fourth brother. But he's the leader. What he suggests is what they do. Reuven wants to save him. They don't agree to that. Shimon and Levi want to kill him. They don't agree to that either. Yehuda, he says, we'll sell him and we will not be involved. And they agree to that. And Yehuda has misgivings. Because after all, it's his brother. What happened to the brother? Where is he? He's troubled. So it's his misgivings regarding his brother that brings him to look at a situation where two of his sons have died because he believes that this is the woman that has caused that. And now he has a third son. And by custom then, he was obligated that the third son should marry her as well. And he's deathly afraid of that. So in the depths of his depression, he meets this woman, and he doesn't recognize her because he does not see it in the big picture. He does not see what is going on here. He doesn't see how the Lord is building the people of Israel. He doesn't see it in the light of 12 tribes. He sees it in its smallness and pettiness. The kid is a brat. He's a danger. He doesn't treat us nicely. And therefore, she said to him, Haker, no. See it correctly. Look what's going on here. Is it accidental that the first two sons died? Is it accidental that you sold your brother? Is all of this only at random, a sordid family story? See it in perspective of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. That's what she demanded from him. And that's why Yehuda, in next week's Parsha, we will see, is the one who saves the situation. Because now he recognizes that something is going on here. It's not just what he thought it was. And that therefore, great risk of action is required on his part. So the same thing happens to Yaakov. Because I'll say, Niglo memenu ruach hakodesh. Yaakov lost his ability to connect with heaven. What does that mean? So again, in its simplest meaning is that heaven, he was so depressed that you cannot communicate with heaven when a person is depressed. But again, in its deepest meaning, he didn't see the connection here. Why should it happen that they should sell, that Yosef should disappear? Why should that be his lot? What's going on here? How could it be that I would have children, they cannot speak to each other? So had he seen the great picture, again, the item in complete perspective, so he would realize that he's being told something here. And that the story of Yosef and the brothers is a paradigm, it's an example for all of Jewish history of the difficulties of different personalities, nevertheless having to unite on the same goal. So that's what they said. Haker. And he was unable to see it then. And when you're unable to see the big picture, naturally you're depressed, because the small picture is always depressing. I had a Jew in Miami Beach. This was before computers. Maybe it was even before the automobile, but he would spend the entire day at the desk of his stockbroker and watch the ticker tape. And he was always depressed because he owned a lot of different stocks. And every day, one of his stocks went down. It has to be. And he never saw the general picture. He never saw he was making money. Only this stock went down. And he would come to shul from Mincha depressed. So he once spoke to me about, because everybody knows that rabbis are psychiatrists, and they have the answers to everything. So I told him that he shouldn't go to the stockbroker and sit there all day. He's bound to be depressed because he's only watching the details. He never sees the picture. But that's what Yaakov was found wanting. So finally, when the brothers come before Yosef, so Yosef sees the big picture. Yosef has had dreams his entire life. He knows that the Lord has spared him for a purpose. Ki lemichya shlachani Elokim. The Lord sent me here so that so many millions can live. It's the mission of the Jewish people. The Gemara says, kol ha'olam kulo nizon b'shvil chanina b'ni. The whole world is fed in the schus of my son Chanina. That's how Chazal looked at the world. That's why everybody can be prosperous, because of Chanina. But the financial experts would never tell you that. And now we're in the eve of the new secular year. So all the geniuses are telling us what's going to be. Having been wrong on what was. It's there to tell you what's going to be. Yosef knows that that is foolishness. Haker Yosef Esechov. He recognized his brothers. He knew the story. He understood the dreams. And he understood how God was going to make it happen. And he understood his mission. I'm here to preserve millions of people. That's my mission. So there, by Haker, he recognized and the brothers did not recognize it. They still saw it as a simple matter of a family dispute, siblings that somehow can't get along with each other. And they had remorse that they had sold him as a slave. They're looking for him to redeem him, but they don't see any major consequences of their behavior. They don't see that for the rest of Jewish history, the divisions in the Jewish people are merely a reflection of the story of Joseph and his brothers. Different people, different circumstances, but it's the same story. If you listen to a session of the Israeli Knesset, you're ready to jump off the roof. Shouting, hurling, and throwing members out of the Knesset. And it's a kindergarten. This is our government. Because they don't recognize what's involved there. They don't see themselves part of the process of redemption. They don't see themselves as being the conduits for the salvation of the Jewish people. They see it only in the small picture. Who's going to be a minister in the government? Who's going to be a judge? Who's going to be this? Who's going to be that? That's what the Mefarshim say, Lo yachlu dabro l'sholom. They couldn't speak correctly because they're not involved in the big picture. Only when he reveals himself, as he does in next week's Parsha, when he says, Ani Yosef, all of a sudden there's a shock. Well, we were talking about big things. We were talking about survival. We live in a time when big things are happening. But because the way it's filtered to us, it's always small events. It's this aggression and that aggression, this happening, that happening. But then what about the big picture? What is really happening? And the Lord is, our generation is a generation to live. So then that places upon us a certain responsibility of recognition. And once we have that recognition, as we will in next week's Parsha, so then the brothers and Yosef become a whole family again. It isn't that they forgot the past. And it isn't that they each retain their own individualistic traits. You see that in the brachos of Yaakov, in the brachos of Moshe. Everyone has a different bracha, but there's one general bracha that binds us all together. And that is the idea of recognition. To recognize the moment, to recognize the generation, the process, to recognize the greatness that's involved, and therefore to rise above all of the small things and to recognize the Ribono Shalom Kaviyachol that leads us to greatness. So Shabbat Shalom and Chanukah Sameach, and thank you for coming. There is no lecture this Saturday night. I am sure that you'll all have withdrawal symptoms.